Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the crowded Mattress Studios here in the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville. We are so excited and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guests today are Jarrett and Jerome Pumphrey. They're here to celebrate Link and Hud, heroes by a hair. Before we invite Jarrett and Jerome into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Help Ringo Tame His Temper, a wonderful, fun, interactive anger management book for kids aged 5 to 8 years old that teaches critical thinking skills, written by our friend Sarah Belisa Tucker. Are you tired of tantrums? Are your child's emotional outbursts turning your life upside down? Parents, teachers, and counselors need a solution that inspires children to take action. This fun, choose-your-own-adventure-style children's book entertains as it gently guides the reader to control their emotions by helping Ringo navigate the consequences and benefits of different decisions throughout his day. Children will read and reread this story repeatedly to see if their advice helps Ringo tame his temper. You and your kids are going to love this. It's going to be a big help in your family. Get it today. Help Ringo Tame His Temper by our friend Sarah Belisa Tucker. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by A is for Always, an adoption alphabet. A beautiful, heartwarming book by our friend Linda Cutting. A is for Always, with your hand in mind. Adoption's a gift that will last for all time. With gentle rhymes and lovely illustrations, A is for Always celebrates the joy and love of adoption from A to Z. With B for birth parents, Q for questions, and U for understanding, it frames challenging aspects of adoption in a way children can understand. Best of all, each page shows a different adopted family of cuddly animals welcoming and cherishing a new child. This is a beautiful book. Obviously, it's a beautiful book for adopted families. It's also a beautiful book for any family and for any classroom. A is for Always, an adoption alphabet by our friend Linda Cutting. Join us right now from Austin in Texas and Tampa Bay in Florida. Our guests are here today to celebrate their brand new middle grade hybrid kind of graphic novel-y chapter book, really exciting story for kids. It's called Link and Hud, Heroes by Hair. Please welcome first from Austin in Texas, Jarrett. Jarrett, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having us.
And his brother in Tampa Bay, Jerome. Jerome, how are you?
I'm doing well too, thank you.
It's the Pumphrey brothers. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Our pleasure. Yeah, happy to be here.
Jarrett, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about Link and Hud.
So, Link and Hud is a book about brothers. We're brothers, and we wanted to write a book about brothers. It was actually our editor's idea. He gave us the idea. And once he gave us the idea, we couldn't think of a better story to tell than our own story. So this book is very heavily inspired by our own childhoods growing up, our own family. And these brothers are basically stand-ins for us, Lincoln and Hudson Dupré, and their parents, Dr. Dupré and Mrs. Dupré. They're basically trying to start run two businesses while they raise a family. And these boys, they have these very active, sort of vivid imaginations. And when they're interacting with the world, they'll see it in these different ways. And you mentioned the book being a hybrid. It's part graphic novel, part regular illustrated novel. And so we use the graphic novel chapters to show these brothers' imaginations. And sometimes they're explorers, or they are archaeologists, space explorers, things like that. And so there are all these different types of heroes. And what tends to happen with them is their imaginations are so vivid, so active, that they spill over into the real world. And we represent the real world in the prose chapters. And the consequences of their sort of imaginations tend to create chaos for the parents in their efforts. And so they have to bring in a babysitter because the boys have been too much for all the babysitters that the parents have hired in the neighborhood. And so they bring in an elderly lady who is based on a very real person from our childhood who watched us to look after the kids. And they don't like her or her sort of old-fashioned ways, and they conspire to get rid of her.
Sounds like the start of Law and Order. Jerome, the title of the book is Heroes by Hair. I would love to be a hero by hair, but I am sadly missing lots of my hair. Tell us a little bit about that title.
Yeah, so it's Heroes by a Hair.
By a hair. Okay, I missed the word. I guess I have a hairs.
Right. So that's what it is. They're barely heroes. They make it to be heroes. But they're portrayed, as Jarrett mentioned, in these imaginative sequences where they imagine themselves to be all different types of heroes. So sometimes you may see them as explorers in the Himalayan mountains, or detectives solving a mystery, or superheroes, or archaeologists, and these really heroic settings that we use to move the story forward. And those are the parts that are told in the graphic novel panels.
Yeah, I love, Jarrett. I love that you are allowing the brothers to have all of these different dreams and seeing themselves as different heroes, because I think that's what kids should be doing. You know, I think I see a lot of kids, and they're specializing, and they're, at a very young age, they're going to be the prima ballerina, or they're going to go to college on a soccer scholarship, or they're going to get into robotics. And so parents just kind of cram them into this one specialty at such a very, very young age. And that's kind of all good. It's great to love something and to really excel at something from a very young age. But boy, it's also a lot of fun to just imagine yourself doing everything. Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think for us as kids, our parents were super encouraging. We got to explore all sorts of different interests. We both played music for a while. We played sports. And we'd run around the neighborhood acting like all sorts of different characters that we'd create and reenacting stories that we wanted to tell. And we just wanted to do that in this book. We worked hard to make each one of these sort of imaginative sequences unique and different. And that was just because we thought it felt best to have a variety of different, like these brothers, they share this view of the world. It's a shared sort of reality, right? They're both imagining the world in a certain way, and they're participating with each other. And the only people who aren't seeing that are the parents or the adults in their lives. But we felt like it would be fresh and fun if it was just variety and it was different.
Yeah. Tell me, Jerome, is this something that you said that the book is basically somewhat based on you? It's a book about brothers by brothers. Is this something that you experienced, that you and Jarrett just both kind of checked out different fantasies and imaginary scenarios together?
Yeah, I definitely think so. We may have even more formally, when we were younger, worked together to create, fictional stories and make up characters. And I remember Jarrett would actually write, full stories with this fictional character. He actually made it into this book. This character was called Wonder Willis, which was a superhero we made up when we were in grade school. And then I would draw the illustrations for it. And, that was one way that we created a whole world inside of our heads that we could then play out and then share the stories even. But I think very true to life, there's things in the story like the first sequence, which is the boys being explorers in the Himalayan mountains, and they end up turning this garage upside down with packing peanuts that they're imagining to be snow. That's really something that we did.
Well, that must have been a lot of fun. Well, not for your parents or whoever had to help clean up that.
Right.
Tell me, Jarrett, what's the process? Was one of you writing the story and the other one illustrating? Were you taking turns? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that's something we talked about quite a bit when we set out to make this first book in the series, because normally the way we work is we've made picture books in the past, and we both write the words and we both make the pictures. And so we initially thought that would be the approach we'd take on this book. Somehow we would both write the text and then we'd figure out how to do the pictures. But after talking about it and reading a lot of other chapter books out there and just seeing how we might work in this format, it made more sense for us to divvy up the roles. One thing we've learned on the picture books is that we each have our own strengths and sort of our own lanes that we excel in. And so I'm certainly more comfortable with text than I am with pictures. Jerome, he is much better at drawing than I am. And so we decided I would write the text and Jerome would draw the pictures. But like with all our books, we sat down, we thought of who are the characters in this book? What's the story? What are we trying to say? How do we want to say that? And then we set out in our roles to sort of do what we needed to do. And we landed on, initially we thought maybe we knew we wanted to do something that we thought was interesting, something in a book that we'd want to pick up and read, because we read so many chapter books and middle grade books and graphic novels and things like that when we started on this project, just to get a feel for what was out there. And quite honestly, there were some great books. There were some great books that we read that we really enjoyed, but there were a whole lot of books that we just were like, wow, books in this category, they can sometimes get a little boring, frankly. And we don't want to make a boring book. We wanted to make a book that a kid would see, they'd want to pick it up, and they'd want to devour it and read it. And so we didn't need to be fast-paced. We wanted to have a lot of illustrations in it. And we wanted to include some graphic novel elements. We both love comics. We both love middle grade novels. Let's put them together. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we decided to do. We'll put them together. And we had two brothers. We had these two different ways of telling stories. And we were like, maybe one brother should be the prose chapters and the other brother could be the graphic novel chapters. We explored that for a little while. That ended up not making as much sense, because the one thing we really wanted to capture was this brotherly dynamic of shared reality and mm-hmm. shared experience. And so the graphic novel chapters help us in a couple ways. They show how imaginative they are, but they also allow us to show an experience that they're having within themselves that the rest of the family isn't in on. And that's something we experience as brothers together and with our other brothers growing up. And it was something that was important for us to put in the book. So that's how we ended up with these two different chapters, two different types of chapters. And it turned out to be a lot of fun to make it that.
Jerome, one of the things I've shared here on the podcast is if I made a mistake with my kids growing up, it was that I didn't appreciate my son, when he was reading all the graphic novels, that I bought him and his uncles bought him that he was actually reading. You know, there were many times that I remember going into his room and saying, dude, please, will you just read a book that doesn't have pictures in it once? You're in high school, please. And I didn't appreciate the fact that graphic novels have it's literature, and there's some great writing and great characters. And do you think it might be easier for parents to kind of sit down and say, okay, this is my kids are reading, because there's a graphic novel stuff in there, but there's also prose in this book. Do you think that might help a parent kind of sit down and go, okay, yeah, this is a book I can give my thumbs up?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I mean, I'll speak to it from my viewpoint. My kids are at the age. Actually, my daughter is 7, so she's the perfect age for this book. And my son is younger than that. He's 5, but he's like super interested in it. And so I look for books that are in this age bracket, and I kind of understand 100% what you're saying of like that urge to put books with, you know, a lot of words in front of them. So it looks like, you know, they're reading at a higher level, or, you know, it looks enriching, right? Mm-hmm. But I think what I found just from what's been happening in publishing with the graphic novel format, a lot of parents that I speak to, they see it as enriching on its own. Mm-hmm. A lot of people do see that. Yeah. But I do think that this is a nice bridge for that, because it is a novel, and then every other chapter or so is a graphic novel. What I like is, as a reader, you know, you get to read some words that are full of text, and then it's a reward. Yes, these cool, fun chapters with the pictures and also the graphic novel chapters are generally, you know, there's these punchy, funny bits that you get to in that, and that's, you know, I just think it's a little bit of a reward as you're making your way through the book. Yeah.
Lots of fun. And I've gone full circle. I really appreciate the fact that now that graphic novels, when our kids are reading graphic novels, they are reading, and it's something that should be encouraged. And I did encourage my son. I took him out. We got him every time I went on the road. We came home with a new graphic novel or anime and manga, you know. But I didn't give him the credit, and I encourage every parent out there to give your kids the credit that they're reading books and falling in love. Because my son is now 30 and he's still reading graphic novels and loving it. Yeah. Jarrett, for you, was there anything that, you know, I've talked to author illustrators in the past and teams that are oftentimes when they're working and, they've kind of set on this direction and this is the way we're going, but all of a sudden the illustrator comes up with this illustration. It's just like, whoa, where did that come from? Oh, we have to take a turn here. We have to take the story in this other direction. Anything like that happen as you were creating this book?
Yeah, it did actually. So I wrote the first draft and we sent it to our editor. Jerome had done some sketches to that point and some character development, and we actually had done the whole first chapter, which is a graphic novel chapter. We had done that in sort of this sample that we wanted to put together to make sure the ideas for the format we had would work. And so, but after that, it was pretty much he was waiting for me to finish the text. So I finished the first draft of the text, sent it to our editor, and it was great. He loved it, but there was one part of it that was a little out of character for these brothers, and it was a part I struggled on, and so I had to give it some thought. And while I was thinking about it and how I would change it to make it work, Jerome went ahead and designed the cover for the book. And there's a part in the book. There's 2 parts in the book where there's toilet paper, and and the boys have some fun with some toilet paper. And one of the parts was in that first draft. It's a later chapter with a mummy in it, and it's their babysitter there, sort of wrapped up in toilet paper as a mummy. And that was all it was. But Jerome decided he was gonna he was going to include toilet paper on the cover, and then he did that. And then toilet paper found its way into the sort of title treatment of the book as a banner. And so there was more toilet paper on the cover than I had expected. And I was like, well, I felt like I needed to amp up the toilet paper in the book. So now in the rewrite of this one section, I went back, added a lot more toilet paper. So now there's 2 parts in the book that deal with toilet paper. I think the rewrite turned out so much better than the original version. And the toilet paper was a great idea. So that was certainly inspired from Jerome's work.
Jarrett, you mentioned toilet paper and all of us started to laugh. Are we all just 7-year-old boys still?
Yeah. There's something about toilet paper that is just a ton of fun. We're getting ready for our launch event at the bookstore that's helping us out. And I built 2 toilet paper launchers so we could have some fun at the event. It's just, there's something about it, you can make a mess with it, but it's non-destructive, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jerome, so what inspired you to add all that toilet paper to the fire?
Yeah, well, I can't take all the credit. We had an art director, who she gave us very good, direction to make the cover really come alive. And there was toilet paper was mentioned in the book, and we were going to have the boys throwing it. And then somehow that was funny, just like we were all laughing when you brought it up. And it was like, oh, toilet paper should be the banner underneath the title. So then that's how it was. I think it was a happy mistake that ended up, enriching it.
Yeah, that's super. We hear all this stuff, about sibling rivalry, and certainly parents who are out there who have kids who are similar ages, they get along one minute and they're not getting along the other minute. Anything like that between you two? Or is it all just we're having a great time creating together?
These days, I'd say it's great times. We get along fantastic, and it's not to say we don't have our disagreements. Mm-hmm. Sure, on some things we disagree, and some of them have been more heated than others. But generally, we're talking pretty low stakes stuff. When we were younger, there were 4 boys in the house.
Oh my!
All around the same ages and all very spirited. So there were certainly more disputes back then, but as we've grown up and gotten older, matured a bit, I think all that's evened out. Yeah. I don't know. I have 2 sons. My sons are older than Jerome's kids, a 13, almost 14-year-old and a almost 16-year-old. So I see a lot of us in them, and as they've gotten older, things have mellowed out for them as well. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's just a part of being brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. No wonder, Jerome, that your parents had to get a mean old babysitter to take care of you guys.
Exactly. She definitely reined us in a little bit. But it was, in the end, we did grow to love her, and it was great.
I'm curious, Jerome, is the babysitter still with us, and is she aware that she's been immortalized in this book?
So I don't believe she is. We actually sort of lost touch over the years, but she was almost grandmother age in our childhood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wonderful. Hey, this sounds like such a fun book, and you said the book is launching soon. Where can we go to find out more about the book, and more about your other picture books, and also more about both of you?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, thepumphrey.com, and we have all our books there, or we're also on social media on Instagram and Twitter. Jarrett is at jpumphrey and Jerome is at wjpumphrey. And we're pretty active on both those platforms.
Wonderful. Well, we've had a really great time speaking to the author and the illustrator of Link and Hud, Heroes by a Hair. Our guest have been Jarrett and Jerome Pumphrey. My friends, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Catherine Marsh. She'll be here to celebrate the lost year. Hey, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. Of course, we would love for you to connect with us on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the contact button at the top of the page. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the podcast. And if you are an author, please be sure to go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how you can be a guest here in the podcast or how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Chris, will start by thanking our guests, Jerome and Jarrett Pumphrey. Please be sure to check out Link and Hud Heroes by a Hair. Also want to thank our sponsors, Sarah, Belisa, and Tucker. Please be sure to check out Help Ringo Tame His Temper. And, of course, we want to thank Linda Cutting, the author of A is for Always, an adoption story. Beautiful, beautiful book. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Will Cheever, Jordan Saley, Cassandra Masonet, Stephanie Davila. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank my son, Christopher, for coming up and helping out in this time. I also want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.